Guys, family, friends, listeners, haters, even. Welcome to another edition of the Cook and the Coach podcast. I'm Beza. I'm the coach.
I'm Kenny. I'm the cook. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you. This will be awesome.
Welcome. So, just a couple housekeeping items before we roll into today's show. Um, last episode, you guys heard the 7 or 10 minute clip or whatever it was of reacting to the murder of George Floyd the day of, and that was on the 20th. What was it? It was like the 31st or something like that. I don't know. Memorial Day
I think,
weekend.
yeah, it was on. We recorded it on Tuesday.
Right. And today is Tuesday, June 9th, when we're recording this.
Mhm.
So much
It's
has happened. I mean, we can't
dude.
even cover it all in one show, but so much has happened
Honestly,
since then.
yeah,
So yeah, we did that episode, and we felt like it wasn't right to put out other content for the past couple of weeks because we wanted time to reflect and time to let the issues that are being discussed right now in the world to be discussed, and we want to take our time to approach the subject with delicacy and with grace.
yeah.
That being said, we do have, I believe, 2 or 3 episodes in the can that we recorded in May.
Yeah.
So we'll release those at some point to you guys. I'm not sure when that will be, but
Hmm.
don't worry, those episodes will be out. Some great conversations with some good friends.
Definitely.
What was I gonna say?
I don't know, but I agree though, man. It's so funny. Like we started this pod, and so many crazy things have happened since then. It's just absolutely insane. The number of like time capsules that this is already, not that this is a time capsule, but even just comparing episode like pre-COVID and then pre all of this stuff with George Floyd and all the things that happened afterwards. Even those two alone
well,
have been remarkable.
well, just think about this whole year in general. We started the show top of the year,
Hmm.
and as we all know, 2020 has been arguably the craziest year of our lives.
Armageddon.
And yeah, honestly, and I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think that like we started the show at the beginning of all the chaos, and
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it's good for us to have a place to vent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Because
It's
I feel
definitely
like,
important.
because I don't feel like and we'll get into this more in a little bit, but there's so much chaos and stuff going on social media, and I feel like
Hmm.
voicing my opinion on social media isn't the most constructive way to do it, and I feel like having a conversation like we're doing here
Yeah,
and then putting out to the world is more conducive to having real conversations and real discussion.
I feel that.
Um, with that being said, um, I want first of all, guys, we heard your now complaints. We heard suggestions about getting the platform out there on other social media spaces.
Yes,
So yes, it is official. It has happened. We are on Spotify, guys.
we did
It's
it.
official. We here, guys. We are on Spotify.
Yeah.
Also on Google Music, right? Is that true too?
Yeah, I think so. It's weird. I haven't checked Anchor in a bit actually. There's other platforms coming too, but right now we're definitely on Spotify and I think Google Music, and eventually it'll be Apple Podcasts and some other stuff too. But yeah.
Yes, eventually Apple and iTunes and all that in the future.
Mhm.
But we are, yes, as of when you're listening to this, we are on Spotify. So if you want to listen to us on Spotify, go over there. You can find us there as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to open, and guys, we're not doing our segments because we're having a conversation about the world we live in and what's going on and with
Yeah.
with Floyd and everything and
Yeah.
I don't even think we need to get into the details of the case or anything like that.
No.
We're just gonna talk about how we're feeling, what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I've had a hell of the last 2 weeks.
For sure, man.
From people, constantly hitting me up on social media or text or calling me, asking me how I'm feeling, which I'm not sure if it was. I don't know if that really helped me or hurt me more, but it just, you
Did it feel
know,
draining?
I'm yeah, like I'm appreciative of the love because for the most part it felt genuine from others, and some didn't, but for the most part
Mm.
it felt genuine coming from some people. But
Yeah.
it's just it was as if people were saying sorry as if a family member died,
Mm.
and they were feeling sorry for me, and like I was like a victim almost, but I don't see myself as a victim. So it's just like I don't know, it was draining.
Yeah.
But we can get to that later. Um, Also, just not even well, one of the situations related, but for the most part, not even related to COVID or George Floyd or protests. There's been a lot of death, like in my circles, whether it be family, whether it be friends. Like
Really?
there's been like 3 or 4 deaths, like in the past like week and a half.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't I haven't I haven't
No.
told anyone about it, but
Oh,
like that on top of everything's just like, ugh,
oh.
and
I'm sorry. I didn't
yeah,
hear. I
like
don't know about that.
yeah, like both of my friends' circles, and then actually my own family. So that's just
Wow.
another layer to it. So like I'm yeah, so I'm slowly going crazy. I'm not totally crazy, but I'm definitely approaching crazy. Also, social media. I don't know why I felt the need to do it, but there was lots of Instagram pages talking about Ethiopian, Eritrean, Habesha Instagram pages talking about how those who don't see themselves as black are misled and
Mm.
you know not true to themselves and their people, and
Mm.
they have to support the movement and they have to agree with everything and fall in line. And I like commented on all those pages and all those posts, and I was like, nah, here's what I
Mm.
believe.
Mm.
And I don't want to say I was crucified, but I
Oh.
was definitely met with some pushback.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, and even a
Wow.
couple of people who I were friends, were, I don't want to say we're not friends anymore, but there's definitely been a rift.
Damn.
And I want to start the show by clarifying the stuff I said in the last podcast and stuff I've said on social media too, because I want to be very, very clear by what I meant and what I believe, so there's no confusion or anything. So I want to go into more detail about what I believe, because actually, like an hour, 2 hour conversation with my brother the other day, and we both disagree. And I realized that in what I said before, that I wasn't totally crystal clear. So let me make this crystal clear, right? So the reason why I don't even address a lot of my white friends as white or my black friends as black is because, and I hate that these words come in my mouth in this particular way because I'm, anti-social justice warrior, but race is a social construct that we can date back to. Is
Yeah.
race, the idea of race came about in the 1500s when the Dutch, who were the first to have slaves, had to figure out, okay, how can we have a workforce that we don't need to pay labor for? No, we don't need to pay, but
Yeah.
we can also distinguish them from the rest of the society, so everyone will know that these are slaves. This is a slave class.
Right.
The easiest way to do that is skin color, right? Someone looks different by their skin color. You
Mm.
know, that's the easiest way to define the ruling class versus a slave class, right?
Mm.
So the idea of race was conceived then to separate, people with a fair skin to dark skin, right? But before that, if you really like pay attention to literature and stuff like that, people didn't like talk about race like they do now. It was more so, oh, this person comes from this area of the world, or they're Persian, or they're, you know, they're Northern African or they're Scandinavian. Like it was very specific to the region that people are from, how
Sure.
they were grouped,
Sure.
not by just their skin tone. Because, different people from different people have different features, right?
Right.
Scandinavians are different from Italians, A
Yeah.
person from Somalia is a little different from a person from Libya. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
They may be considered in the same race. There's really a lot of variance, a lot of difference. So the idea of race in of itself is racist, in my opinion.
Mm.
So labeling, just saying, oh, that's a white person, it's a black person, like this, the idea of that in and of itself is a rate to even go down that path is continuing the narrative of racism.
Interesting.
In my opinion.
That's interesting.
And so the reason why I cannot say that I am black, because in my opinion, to say that you are black is to say that you come from ancestors who were stripped from their homeland, brought over to either America, Europe, the West Indies, what have you. And because of that, you had to create a whole new identity and a whole new culture and a whole new way of being, pretty much, in order to identify to identify yourself, basically, right?
Right.
My people did not go through that. We were not slaves. We were not taken from our homeland. In fact, if you want to go even further back with it, we were actually the ones doing the enslaving. Just saying what it is. For me to say, do I have black skin? Duh. Am I white? No, of course not. Let's just call the bullshit, okay? But what I am saying is, for me to say that, oh yeah, I'm black too, is historically not accurate. Am I also a descendant of Africans? Yeah, just like them. Is there overlapping similarities? Of course there are. I would never dispute that. There are many overlapping similarities between Habesha culture, Habesha, people, and Black Americans. Many overlapping features.
Mm.
But just because there's many overlapping features does not mean we are the same.
Right.
I want to make that very clear. Just because there's lots of similarities does not make us the same. Now,
right.
Do we face... Now, a lot of people will throw in my face, well, if someone sees you in the street, they're not going to say Ethiopian or say black. Obviously.
Yeah.
I understand that. And I'm not mad when that happens. I understand that fully. Well, when the cop pulls you over, he's not going to see you as Ethiopian, he's see you as a black guy. Obviously. Let's not play semantics here. But I'm talking about how I see myself, not how the world views me.
Mm. Yeah.
Going off of that, I think that we need to start reclaiming and celebrating ethnicity over race. Because race was meant to divide. Race was made up to divide. That was the whole purpose of it in the beginning. It wasn't a thing until we made it up. But what is real and what is tangible and what should be celebrated is ethnicity, is culture, is language, is certain types of cuisine. That's what we need to celebrate and claim. Mm. Black Americans have their own identity by being black because they had to make a new one. They had to create a new culture. They had to create a new way of living. They had to create their own religious philosophies. They had to do their own thing because they had nothing else to fall back on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely.
So, again, I recognize that I am a person of color, and if someone calls me black, I'm not going to get mad or upset. But I just do not simply view myself in that way. So,
and just from knowing you for a long time, you've made a conscious effort to really connect with your Ethiopian heritage, more than most people I know, in terms of like really understanding the history and like traditions like of your ethnicity and like your heritage and like your lineage, essentially, which is really admirable. I certainly know, I think we talked about this on the Frozen episode, where I know almost nothing about Scandinavian, Northern European culture, but I want to learn more
Hmm.
when I see like a depiction of it. So I can definitely attest that you've made like a conscious effort, like pretty much the whole time I've known you.
Ironically, though, Ethiopians see me as too white, and then white people see me as black, but not Ethiopian, but
Damn.
also too white to be black.
Mm,
So
yeah,
I don't know.
that's
It's
rough.
a very, I don't know.
That
When you're
sucks,
growing
man.
up, it not that anyone was intentionally trying to hurt me, but like it definitely put me through a loop trying to when I was struggling with self identity growing up. So
Totally.
um,
Do you think
it,
that that's something that you see is common with other people who are like people of color and also people who are like first generation, like figuring out like that cultural divide?
yeah, because what I'm saying is something that a lot of the older generation tends to think, and then that's the way how they tend to see themselves.
Mm,
But a lot of first generation, I would say most of the first generation Habeshas that are in the states that are my age or younger, or maybe even slightly older, they say, "Oh no, we're black." They just lump themselves with Black Americans, and I don't. I'm not saying they're wrong or they're necessarily bad for doing that, but understand what you're saying and what you're doing when you do that.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you
Like
understand the history of
your
that.
people, your people didn't go through slavery.
Mm,
Your people didn't go through Jim Crow.
mm,
Do you perhaps face racism in modern day and face modern day problems? Yeah, of course. I'm not going to dispute that. But to claim that the struggle is the same, no, let's not do that. And people are saying also, not a lot, but there's been a couple of people saying like how so you don't support Black Lives Matter and you don't support black people. That's not what
mm,
I'm saying. In fact, I think it's our responsibility even more to support black people in their issues because when Ethiopians were fighting the Italians in the 40s, who was it that came to our defense and our aid in that time? It was American soldiers, the majority of whom were black.
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So when we were in our time of greatest need, arguably in our history, black Americans stood up for us and came and help us. So
Wow.
it's only right for us to stand alongside them.
Mm,
And again, I'm not saying that if you disagree with my viewpoints that you're a bad person or that you're even wrong necessarily. I'm just telling you how I view the world and how I see it. And going into that, going segueing from that, because I feel like I've just
no, this is dude. That
said
was
everything
awesome.
I need to say.
Yeah.
Um, so there's been a lot of talk on social media, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way I do, Ken, because I am extremely conflicted
Mm, yeah.
because
I already agree with
I'm
you.
not I'm not right, I'm not left. I'm a person who sees both sides, and I just try to see, which viewpoints I agree with, which ones do I not agree with. Do you think that America has institutional racism or has a system of racism, or that systematic racism is a thing?
Yeah. I would say yes.
I don't think systematic racism is a thing.
Mm, not at all.
What I believe is that they are racist individuals
Mm,
who used the American system to fit their ideology of suppressing certain people, but I don't think the system itself is racist. Because if that was the case, Asian Americans, Indian Americans, Nigerian Americans, and Ethiopian Americans wouldn't be surpassing white people in every category.
mm,
I could go deeper with that with numbers and everything, but um, I don't know. I just have a really tough time saying that the system is racist
mm,
because police brutality affects all people. Let's
right.
let's let's just be very clear. It Yes, it does affect the black community. I don't think anyone on any side is denying that. I
Yeah.
think the issue is some people believe that it's affecting minorities specifically, more so, and some people think that's just affecting people. But I think we can all agree that it is affecting people, and there does need to be change in policing in this country. I don't think anyone denies that. I think that's where the conversation deviates, because I think for everyone agrees what happened, George Floyd is wrong. Everyone agrees that there needs to be change in policing. No one disagrees with that.
Yeah.
Where we all disagree is it a race thing?
Yeah, and it's hard to prove that
that's
racist.
Where I'm stuck, because I understand both sides of the aisle, and that's where I don't believe that America has a racist system, but I don't know if I can totally say that's not affecting minorities specifically more so. I don't know. Guys, we don't want the conversation to end here. Like, reach out to us, reach out to our Instagram page, our individual pages, and if you have questions, you have comments, you have things you want to talk about, let us know, because I mean, this conversation is not going to be over for a while. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really happy to have our guest on the podcast today. He's a friend of mine, known him for years now. He's the head pastor at Perazim Church. He's also the host of Shaping a Culture podcast, which I was actually a guest on a while back. It's Ebenezer Endiryas from Perazim Church, and here's our discussion with him.
I was just saying that I was like, I think we've played basketball a couple times together, but other than that, I don't know if we've like ever chatted or hung out. But I was like, I recognize you though.
Yeah, no, I recognized you too. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know his name.
That's dude, I'm so bad with names. Your name is very memorable to me, so I'm like Ebenezer. For some reason, that just locked in right away for me. But I'm such a jerk so often with people's names, and it's not personal. I recognize everybody's face. Some people are like, I forget people's faces, and I'm like, you're lying. That's impossible. It's impossible. Yeah. But I can't remember names to save my life. But
I'm the same way. I'm terrible with names. I'm good with faces. So I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you actually read the book? What's the book? How to Win Friends and Influence People?
No, but I've heard of that though.
Yeah. So
what if I had like 10 copies of it behind me? I was like, why else I have?
I see what you did. Yeah, no, that book actually talks about one of the key ways in which you can make a lasting impression on people is like remembering their name. And so ever since I saw that, I'm like, I gotta get better at remembering people's names.
Nice. Tell me if you think this is creepy. I have on my iPhone like a note in my notes app that when I meet someone, I'm like, I'm gonna forget your name, but I don't want to. Like I write down their name in my phone and like where I met them. And that way, like, if I see them, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't remember who that is. And then I look, I'm like, okay, this person, coffee shop, okay, I remember their name now. Is that creepy, or is that, like, resourceful?
I think that's smart. Yeah, it's definitely.
That's very smart.
Yeah.
I always feel weird, though. I feel like a stalker, like, writing down information, like, scuttling away.
Hey, man, whatever helps jog your memory.
Yeah.
It does. It's pretty effective. I would recommend to anybody who struggles with that.
Yeah, I might have to pick up on that.
It's a move. How has it felt lately, just like with everything going on, like, and also leading a church? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what are your emotions? Like, where are you at right now?
Yeah. I think that being a Christian is probably the best thing for me in times like this. I was actually talking with a friend last night. I honestly don't know how I could cope or handle or process anything that has taken place without the gospel. And so for me, I mean, it's a great privilege that I get to pastor Perazim Church, but I think that it's exciting that we get to rally around or come together and come under this message of hope, this message of justice, this message of reconciliation, this message of Jesus. And so for me, I think studying the Bible, preparing messages, having conversations in some ways have been therapeutic for me because it points me back to my hope. It points me back to truth, really. And so It's been hectic. There's people you got to call. There's people that I've been checking in on. People have questions. People have doubts. People are like, does God even have something to say about this? And so I have tough conversations, but I think overall, it keeps me grounded in the word that's full of hope. So it's been good, man. I think I would literally go crazy without Jesus. So
Mhm.
good, man. Yeah.
I feel that.
I want to ask you, for me, this situation feels extremely different from past protests, past injustices done to the Black community. Um, I feel like for multiple reasons. One, all of us, we're from the Twin Cities, so this one, hits close to home, literally.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the video, I mean, it wasn't a split second decision. It wasn't like a sudden movement. It was 9 minutes of just, I mean, horror. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. And then I feel like, there's less gray area with this. It's
No gray
it was just
area.
wrong. There's no gray
Yeah.
area. It was
Yeah.
just, it was murder. We all
Yeah.
saw
Straight
it.
up.
And
Yeah.
all my friends, no matter how far left or how far right, they all agree this is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
They must be prosecuted. And a discussion. And there is some, division as far as, you know, there's some division, as far as, is this all about race? Do we actually need police reform? Blah, yada, yada, yada. But it does feel more unified than it has in the past.
Yeah.
Obviously, the COVID-19, all that stuff, really got us pent up in our houses. And, you
Yeah.
know, so, I mean, does this feel different to you as well? Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I feel like, I think we're not arguing. I think what's frustrating is, what's encouraging on one end is I don't see much debate about whether this is right or wrong. Where I do see the debate is what's going to happen moving forward, or how should we interpret or understand everything that took place. And so, yeah, man, I think that like there is no. I was thinking actually the other day, like I've actually seen a lot of people on my news feed that I've never seen talk about anything like police brutality. Talk about police brutality. I think that I've seen more and more people speak up. I've seen more people voice their opinion and share the sentiment I think most of us have, which is this is wrong on so many levels. And so I've been able to protest I think 3-4 times now in the last 2.5 weeks, and it's just the solidarity is unbelievable. I mean, you got all types of people out there, all sorts of ages, coming together. And I didn't march when Philando Castile died, but everybody I know that was doing it then had told me the exact same thing. It just feels different, like this is not your normal case. And I think, yeah, I honestly think if you were to look at that video and think that there is some type of explanation behind what took place, I don't think you're human. Like I don't think that you have a heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't acceptable in any way by any means under any circumstance. And so, but yeah, I'm thankful that people can rally around that, can at least agree on that. But it's been disheartening to see the follow-up conversations and the debates that have been taking place, or the disagreements around what needs to take place, or the reform that needs to happen, or just the defunding of the police that needs to happen. That's a whole nother conversation. But to answer your question, yeah, man, it's a lot more people are on the same page about it this time around. And I've seen more and more people say, I don't need to wait for the context. I don't need to wait for all the information. I think what they saw was sufficient. And so, yeah, man.
So going off of that, first of all, I just want to say that I have a lot of respect for you, as a man, as a brother in Christ, as a pastor. I think what you've said so far on social media, just talking to you in person at the rally the other day. I just want to say that I have a lot of respect for you and everything you've been saying, because it's been really encouraging to me. Um, as a pastor in the church, as a person who is a leader in our Christian community, you know, there's argument between right and the left, right? But that also exists within the church, right? You have fractions of the church that are very conservative, and some that are, you know, I don't want to say secular, but, you know, more so left, right? And even within the church, there's lots of division over this topic, this issue. And I think that it's no secret that there has to be racial reconciliation within the church, because some people say, you know, Sunday's the most racially divided day of the week, you know. And I think a problem that we run into is the left kind of makes it a racial issue, which, you know, we can't talk before. You know, I'm not 100% certain on, but the left makes it a racial issue, and the right totally dismisses that and says it's not a racial issue at all. And I'm not sure if I totally agree with that either. I'm kind of in this in-between weird stage where I'm not sure if it's racial or not racial. But there is a police brutality issue, regardless of whether you think it's racial or not. There is a police brutality issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm wondering, as a church, how do we navigate this conversation? Because there's so many different elements to it, and it just seems like the more we talk about it, the less and less likely we're able to come up with a solution. So as a church, how do we even begin to have this conversation?
Yeah, bro. You know, I think the very first thing we got to start doing is we got to stop politicizing loving our neighbor. I think that's the very first thing we got to stop doing. Like, God is not Republican. God is not Democrat. God is about kingdom, right? And so I think that when you start making what happened to George Floyd a matter of politics, you've already, like, I think to me, like, you've already missed it all. This is an issue of loving our neighbor, and this is an issue of justice. This is not an issue of do the conservatives need to take care of this? Do the left, do the liberals, do the progressive need to? I think the Christians need to take care of this. And I think that Christians need to speak up and say, listen, what has taken place isn't right. And because here's my thing. I think the temptation is in the church, we like to think that God belongs to one party. And when we believe that God belongs to one party, it's very easy for Christians to ignore some issues or champion others. And I think that we should take care of and champion all issues that God is concerned with. And so when you think like that, there's going to be times where you're going to side with the left, and there's going to be times where you side with the right. There's going to be times where you vote Republican. There's going to be times where you vote Democrat, right? Because we're trying to bring kingdom down. We're trying to bring heaven down. And heaven is far greater than what the system that we've created in America. This is like man-made. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Like, and why are you putting us in a box? Like, we're too complex to be one over the other. Like, you can't say, like, I belong to a specific party. I belong to God, and God has a lot to say about a lot of things. And so, yeah, I think to me, what we got to stop doing in the church is stop making it a matter of politics and start making it a matter of kingdom. And the church should step up and see if it's not right, fight. I mean, like, you know, when I think about MLK, bro, like, everything he did was through the church, right? And I don't know why we've lost sight of that over time. I don't know what happened. But I feel like you know, I remember Billy Graham. I don't know if you guys know this or not. Billy Graham talked about one of his biggest regrets in his ministry was not walking with Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow.
So, he's like, I did a lot of great things.
That's heavy, man. Yeah. That is heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that, like, we have to understand that when you're limited to a party, you miss out on maybe what God is saying to you. Because when your allegiance is to a party, it's very hard for you to step outside of that. But if your allegiance is to God, there is no political party that owns you. God does. And so you're not thinking, oh, what would the conservatives say? What would the liberals say? No, you're concerned with, what does God have to say? What do I have to do about that in response? And so for me, like, my biggest response would be, we got to stop politicizing kingdom work. We got to stop politicizing the heart of God. God does not belong to a party. And ultimately, we don't, like, before we're American, before we're Ethiopian, before we're Black, before we're any of that, we're Christian. And it's our Christian values that inform who we are in this body. And so, yeah, man, I gotta be consistent with the word of God. And I think the reason why churches are making it about the left or the right is because they're not adhering to all of God's heart, all of God's ways, all of God's commands. But when you do that, you're not going to sit around debating, well, is this consistent with my political beliefs? Like, listen, if your political belief is not submitted to your biblical beliefs, you're worshiping America. You're not worshiping God.
Ooh. Come on now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up to that. So I totally agree with what you're saying. I think a hopeful or maybe positive perspective of why people might really gravitate towards one party or another is that maybe they think that either the left or the right is their best chance to solve the problems that they see in the world, like for themselves and for their community.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes when you're like, okay, well, this is my team because I have to try to like fix these problems. And so sometimes you just, turn a blind eye to certain other things you might not agree with because you're like, for whatever reason, I think this is my best chance at solving a problem.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is like, there's no way that any one side can be a holistic representation of how to approach all the problems of the world, obviously. So like, my thing is, I think the church probably needs to be excellent at consistently disagreeing and like problem solving together, like a space where maybe no one agrees perfectly about like how to solve a problem. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we disagree well?
Oh man, there's so much to say about that. I think it starts with love and humility. I think it starts with having the ability to listen, and you don't have the ability to listen without humility. It starts with acknowledging that you don't have all the right answers. I mean, this sounds so simple, but we're not listening to others because we think that they should be listening to us, and we think that others should be listening to us because we're right all the time.
Right. Could
it be that we might be wrong?
Impossible. I have to be right all the time so I can solve the problems.
Right? It's like, listen, like, we gotta, I think, like, I'll start. I don't know if this is a controversial statement, but I'll say this.
That's what we're all here for.
If we're not listening to people that are hurting, I think we've missed it as Christians. Like, I think about Acts, and I think about there was a time where the widows were being overlooked, right? The people that were in need were being overlooked. And, the church raised up leaders that would facilitate help or that would contribute to aiding those that were being neglected. But the only reason why they were able to do that is, they heard the need or the cry of the people. They didn't sit around and say, well, you're just being dramatic, or no, you don't understand, you got to pray more. If you just apply this message, no, it's like, no, they have a need, they have a hurt, we're listening to them. And then secondly, what I saw in that story or that passage is they raised up leaders that represented the cultural piece of those that were being marginalized. So, like, they didn't just put anybody in charge. They put those in charge that were acquainted with the pain of the people, that had that kind and I think a lot of the times, like, what you see is, we don't really know how to listen, and B, like this, again, this might be controversial, but like, this like savior complex where, like, once we even get the problem, we want to fix it instead of like promoting or resourcing or giving opportunity to those that are a little bit more qualified, if not way more qualified to do the job, right? But because we want to attach our name to it, like we say, well, I did this and we did that, but like you're really not helping the problem. Like you're just pacifying the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what we need to do is A, listen, and then B, like get out the way and help people that can actually do something about it. I think the most helpful thing some people can do is to educate themselves, is to learn, to sit, to listen, to let others do the work. It's okay to not have the right answer. It's okay to not know what to do. It's okay to be confused, but don't walk around like you know what's going on. And I think like humility grants you the opportunity to be realistic about yourself. It gives you the access to actually be sober-minded about yourself and do something that's more productive and something that will have actual lasting change. But yeah, I mean, I would start there. I would start with humility and love, listening to each other, investing in people that actually do something about it, and not trying to be the savior of it all. Because like, if you're trying to be a savior to something you have no idea about, you will only wreak havoc. You will only make the problem worse. And so I feel like we need to get out the way. We need to listen to people. We need to love each other in that way. But I think that's the best way we can solve some of our conflicts, you know, is just being humble and being sober-minded about oneself. Yeah.
I like that. I was thinking, going along with that, this might be a controversial thing to say too, but I've just been thinking that I think there's a lot of white people who have the mentality of, I need to go save this problem, I need to go fix it, and I think that's really tricky when you haven't experienced it, or you're cramming for an exam like over 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to be a dick, but I'm just like, I felt this thing where I was like, I don't know.
You don't have to, like, I think sometimes, like, again, when you don't understand what's going on, like if I'm going on the court and I don't know the plays, I'm only going to hurt my team. I might even score for the other team.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I'm going to just be vulnerable with you. Like, being Ethiopian, I want to say for the longest, I was ignorant to what was going on. And so I remember 4 years ago was like a huge wake up call for me. I saw what happened with Philando Castile, and I was like, yo, this isn't right. But like, yo, I didn't really know how to honestly respond to what was going on. I knew that I was hurt. I knew that it wasn't right, but I didn't know what to. So what I did is I just stayed silent. And for 40 years, I just educated myself. I listened to other Black leaders. I listened to Black pastors. Yeah. I read books from Black authors. Like, you know, like I just did what I could do to understand it, not just on a psychological or sociological front, but even on a theological front. What does God have to say about this, right? And what I did is and even now, like, to be 100% honest, like, I don't feel like I'm well versed. I feel like I'm like 4 years later, I'm still growing in my knowledge of what this is all about and actually how to move forward in this. And so, yeah, man, I think the most helpful thing we can do sometimes is shut up and just listen and to learn.
Couldn't agree more.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know, that could be supportive. Like, yo, if we had white brothers and sisters that would reach out and be like, hey, can you give me a book or two? Like, I really want to learn. Like, hey, can you point me to some great leaders that I can watch? Hey, what? And then I'll say this too. I don't know. This is going to be extremely controversial, but I heard a pastor say this and I really loved it. But he was like, yo, sometimes don't even ask your Black brothers and sisters. Just do the work yourself. He was like, if America could get to the moon, why can't they do a little bit of history work and figure out what's been going on? Like, if America could literally get on a rocket and put a flag out in the middle of, like, not even on this earth, like on a whole nother planet, like, why can't you just go on Google and search American history or police brutality or, right? And so, because sometimes, like, I'm just going to speak for my my Black brothers and sisters, like, there's trauma associated with having to constantly explain ourselves. And so like, yeah, but all that to say, like, I really think that the best thing we can do, the most supportive thing we can do is just to be quiet and learn and ask questions and understand, seek to understand. And then I think something beautiful can come out of that. Yeah.
So me and Kim, we had our little segment before we hopped on with you. I've been feeling extremely conflicted and confused, and I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. And I watched KB's video actually the other day, and something stuck with me. He said that like it's okay to have anger.
Yeah.
You know, God gets angry sometimes, and it's about, you know, learning how to use that anger to make something right out of it. And so that's stuck with me for the past day or two. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And then actually I have another question, but I'll ask that later. So if you want to respond to that real quick about having anger, but realizing that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The Bible calls it righteous indignation. So this is what I've been telling my community at Perazim. For those that don't feel anger, we've been praying that God gives them anger. And for those that God has granted anger to, we're praying that it's righteous anger or righteous indignation. Here's the thing. If you are not upset about what happened to George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or the Breonna Taylors, or like the list it's exhausting, endless. Yeah. So if your heart doesn't break over that, if you don't get upset about that, that's a problem. But like the thing is, like in our anger, we shouldn't sin. And so how do you know, like, what's the difference? And I think the difference is how we go about it. So if your anger is leading you to hate, that's not righteous anger. If your anger is leading you to give your money, to protest, to vote, to educate yourself, to ask questions, to play a part in the solution, that's righteous indignation. And I think what righteous it's fuel to do righteous work. It's fuel to do the right thing. And so sometimes you need that anger to do something about it, like to change things, to change policies, to change laws, to change the conversations, to change the narrative, to change the outlook, to change everything that's going on. And so I think like when you have righteous indignation, it leads, as KB was talking about, to productivity. It leads to wholesome solutions, wholesome change. But when you're just angry, man, you can, without it being righteous, like you can do a lot of harm to your friends, a lot of harm to yourself, a lot of harm to your community, a lot of harm to your social media platform, a lot of harm to your podcast platform. Like if you're using your anger to divide people, if you're using your anger to burn things down, if you're using your anger to gossip, if you're using your anger to spread lies, if you're using your anger to fight, like all those things are not productive. And so the thing for me is like I want to make sure that my anger is leading me towards wholesome solutions, towards righteous solutions, so that we don't see the same thing happening over and over again. You know, like that's the thing. Like there comes a time when you get so angry, you never want to see that happen again. And when you get to that place, like you invest yourself, you pour yourself into a community, into an organization, into a program, you vote, you do the hard work, you do the heavy lifting, so that at least you can leave your kids or your grandkids with a world that's a little bit better than how you found it.
So before this, me and Ken were talking to, and I talked about this in the last episode of our podcast, and I've been kind of talking about a little bit in the comments on social media, on Instagram, whatever. And I feel kind of, I don't know if conflict is the right word, but like, I'm not sure like how to approach this conversation really, but I see myself as Ethiopian American, not as Black.
Yeah,
and I understand that a lot of people in our community do not agree with that idea at all, especially with the younger generation. I understand where they're coming from when they say that. I just don't see that as right to claim myself as Black. But I do understand that there are many overlapping similarities in our cultures and how we're treated by the rest of American society, right? I mean, I'm sure you and I can swap stories about experienced racism, growing up. But I don't think that means I'm any less empathetic to what's going on. And I've been trying to take time to listen to my Black brothers and sisters about what's going on. And me and Ken were also talking before this. I personally don't necessarily believe in systemic racism in today's America as we know it. I think it's definitely a problem of the past, but I don't believe that there's a racist system in hand. And I don't necessarily believe 100% that police brutality is a minority-only issue. But at the same time, I want to be empathetic to people who do believe that, and I want to hear their stories, and I want to hear them out. And it's hard, too, because I have data and facts from both sides, conflict with each other, and it's hard for me to know what to say in these times, because I have white friends, Black friends, constantly asking me, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell them. So how would you respond to someone like me who feels conflicted in the situation I'm in? Because I think it's fairly a unique one to find myself in. Even though I'm not Black, I don't see myself as Black, but I'm treated as such. But I don't believe it's some racism, but I also believe that racism exists on an individual level, very much so. And how would you respond to that, basically?
So I feel like that's man, I don't think that's
a whole other can of worms. That's a whole other can of worms. Let me ask you really quick. Do you see yourself as Black or Ethiopian, or how do you do yourself?
I mean, I see myself as Ethiopian American and Black, right?
Okay.
So if the police pulls me over, he's not going to see an Ethiopian man. He's going to see a Black man. You know what I mean? So most people, unless like you're familiar with Ethiopia or Somalia, I get mistaken for being Somalian all the time too. Unless you're like familiar with that, they just see another Black man. You know what I mean? And so, but that's a whole nother thing. But I actually do believe in systemic oppression. And what I would say to that is, look at, I mean, this is a long conversation, but
oh yes.
Yeah. So my whole thing is, I mean, the thing that first comes to my mind is implicit bias. Like people will look at names like Ebenezer or Beza, and our resumes can look identical to a George or a Matthew or a John, and we won't get the call back because of our names. You know what I mean? Like we might not. So here's the thing, like there might not be a law that's against that, but there are systems set in place that do not hold those laws accountable. And so what you see here is institutional racism to me. Like what happened with the cop, with like George Floyd, right? There is no law that allows for the officer to do what he did, but there is no system in place that holds them accountable. So they literally get away with it time and time and time again. And so there might not be racist laws or what have you, but there's institutional racism. There are literally systems set in place that allows for such killings to take place. And so think, bro, like how long did it take all 4 officers to get arrested? If you and I were to do something remotely close to what they did, we would be arrested on the spot, if not die on the spot, right? How is it that the system, not necessarily the law, because according to the law, they should have been arrested immediately, but how is it that there was a system that allowed for them to not be arrested for that long? And I wonder if there wasn't looting, if there wasn't violence, if there wasn't protest, I wonder if they would have been arrested altogether. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fair question. I just knowing having spoken to my lawyer friends and friends in law enforcement,
Mm,
because they have to charge them with something, right? But they have to make sure that those charges stick. And we all know that charging, convicting police officers is extremely difficult. So when people are saying that, why isn't this case moving faster? Like, why didn't get arrested faster? I'm actually worried they're moving a little too quickly because I'm thinking they're getting a little too ahead because they're trying to appease a mob, and because of that, the case is gonna fall flat and they're gonna get off. That's my biggest fear. But
yeah.
I don't know. That's just why I was just went with that. But
I mean, you hear what happened with Wells Fargo not too long ago, where they were denying people of color loans that
yeah,
were,
I heard about that. I don't know the whole story, but I did hear about it. Yeah,
I mean, like they were literally giving out loans to, I don't know. There's like so many things we could talk about, but
it's a longer conversation for sure.
yeah, but I definitely think though that like we've just seen time and time again that institutions and systems have failed black and brown people and people, I mean, from like housing despair to credit loans to police brutality, like I mean the list goes on. Like we economic, like education, right? Economically, like there's just so much that, again, there is no law like that would, but like there's systems set in place that hold people back from truly experiencing. But I also do think there needs to be some laws that need to be changed as well so we can get better systems. I'll put it like this. Like at Parazine Church, like we launched a church, right? We have
Right.
certain core values or laws, or things that we adhere to or believe in. But if we don't have systems that bring that home, it doesn't matter if we believe that, right? So for an example, if we believe in confessing sin, but the church, if we don't have any system set in place for that to take place, we failed, right? And so it goes
Sure.
on and on and on. And so again, like the question is like, why are people of color, black people, constantly being disenfranchised and being taken advantage of and so on? But yeah, this is maybe when we get off camera, we can look at facts and data and so on and so forth. But
This is
yeah,
for sure a longer conversation in here. You said a lot of things that were interesting to me. Personally, I don't still see it as systemic racism. I think there is a system that can be played by people, right? And I think there are more racists out there than people realize. And I think those individual racist people can oftentimes get in positions of power and abuse that power to fulfill their ideology or whatever you want to call it. But
let me
but
ask
I
you
definitely
this.
do want, yeah, yeah,
So who creates systems?
individuals.
Could it be that racist individuals create systems?
Yeah,
You know what I
I'm not
mean?
gonna disagree with that.
Yeah. Because like sometimes we think that like systems just come out of thin air, but like no, these systems are created by people that are just like you and I, just regular people, and there are those that are in power that are racist as well that create
Yeah,
these systems. So we can't rule that out either. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I just think I don't know because I don't know necessarily what to believe. I mean, like I said before, there's numbers that support both sides of the argument. And it's hard for me to decide which side to align with.
Yeah, that's
But I
real.
don't know it should be. But at the same time, I don't know why we need to be looking at it from like you were saying before. It shouldn't be about one side or the other. It should be, hey, there is right and there is wrong, and we need to right the wrongs that we see in the world. And
Yeah.
police brutality, whether you agree or not, that affects minorities disproportionately or it doesn't. Either way, police brutality is wrong.
Yeah.
So we need to fix the police system in America, regardless of what side of the aisle you're from. You
Yeah.
should believe in police reform in some aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, bro. Like I think the police have too much power. And when you have too much power, so here's my thing, the whole like abolish the police, defund the police. I don't necessarily know what I believe on that. It's a new concept and I'm trying to study and understand it all together. But like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the simple concept I think is really dope. Like to, defunding the police. They're not saying like, get rid of police. They're saying cut their budget and invest in other departments of social services. You know what I mean? Whether that be education or mental health or different things like that. And so, I mean, we police mental health, bro. Like, I don't think we should be policing mental health. Or we
Right.
we invest more in police in schools than we do teachers in schools. You know what I mean? And so, I definitely think that there are different things. Again, I'm not co-signing the whole movement. I'm just saying I'm looking into some of these things and I'm realizing like some of the issues that we've given over to the police doesn't necessarily need to be given over to the police. And so, yeah, man.
Just piggybacking off of what you're saying there, I personally had never even heard of a broader like defund the police idea until last week. I think it's a very new idea to me. Besides, like some cuts or like changes to how they police, I'm more familiar with that. And at first, it was a real knee-jerk reaction for me, and I started thinking and I don't know where I stand on this either, but I was thinking like, well, what's the end goal? Like the end goal, like what would be like the best case scenario? Like no one needs to be protected. That would be the best case scenario. Everyone gets along so well that we don't even need to be protected. We're just doing great. But like realistically, we probably need some. But like I was thinking like if there's a financial incentive to need to protect people, that seems like a bad that seems like a bad rule to have in place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, it's a new concept to me too. It's kind of, I don't know, either I was behind and everybody knew about it and so they're championing it now.
That's how I felt. Yeah.
I was like, for me, before I co-sign anything, I need to fully understand it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
right.
Yeah, like you guys both said, we all want the same thing. And I think that enough is enough. I think the revolution, in my opinion, has started and they're waking up to the ills that are plaguing our nation. And I think like it's time for a change. And again, we might have disagreements on how we see change being brought about, but at least the conversation is there and people have identified the problem, but it's a long, there's so much to say about that. Yeah.
We're walking like a very narrow line. There's just huge conversations at every turn. Like we can't get sucked into any of them like too much. But.
I mean, we might have to have you on again sometime in the future, bro, because I mean, this is a very, very large conversation that needs to be addressed. And I mean, I feel like the more we get deeper into it, there's like more questions that are brought up. There's like new questions at each turn you take.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Before we let you go, any last thoughts you want to share with the people, with the listeners, on how as a church we can respond to this issue and, where we can, have conversations about this and how we should address these conversations? Any last thoughts that you have?
I think that the gospel matters and you can't escape justice in addressing the gospel. And so, there's a clip Pastor Matt Chandler from Dallas, Texas said, I actually reposted on my story where he was talking about, it's so crazy how, when it comes to, I should say, sex trafficking, we don't say, just shut up and preach the gospel. We put feet on that thing. When we talk about abortion, we don't just say, just preach the gospel. We literally put feet to that, But it's so weird when it comes to like matters of justice. We just say, just preach the gospel. Like it can't just, it has to be preaching the gospel and it has to be acting in step with the gospel. And so I think that we have to do our part as the church. I would love to see the church step up once more and engage in these conversations, because I think that our why is also our witness. Like, as we're out there running with everybody else, fighting for the same thing, as people come in contact with what we believe and what we're about and why we're doing what we're doing, that's a platform to see others come to know who God is. Like, you don't know how many times I've had conversations with people who've told me that they didn't think that God cared about justice, or that God was silent on this, or God had nothing to say about this. And nothing can be further from the truth. And so the church needs to be, we talk about it all the time, like, be the light, be the salt. We don't know what that means. What it means to be the light and salt is to fight for justice, because it represents the heart of God. And so, yeah, my plea for Christians would be to step up, to say something, to fight, to endure, because I don't think this is going to be solved overnight. And my fear is that, we get caught up in the popularity of it all, the clout of it all. But then when the dust settles, nobody's really talking about it, we stop fighting. But like, my encouragement would be that we continue to have podcast episodes, that we continue to make sermons, that we continue to foster healthy conversations, that we continue to vote, that we continue to talk about the problem, that we continue to, like, let's not let this be just a 5-minute thing. Let it be a lifelong journey. Because God cares about it, we should care about it for the rest of our lives. And so, yeah, that would be my last thought. And my plea with the church is, like, God cares about it. I'll end with this. On the cross, I was sharing this with my church. On the cross, we always talk about the love of Jesus, right? We always say, look at the cross. It signifies the love of Jesus. But nobody ever talks about the cross signifying the justice of Jesus, or God, I should say. What I mean by that is, why didn't God just do away with our sin? Why didn't God just forget our sin? Why didn't God just turn a blind eye to our sin? It's because he's a just God. Because he's a just God, our sins had to be atoned for. And so what you see on the cross is not just a demonstration of God's love, but it's a demonstration of God's justice, because he would not ignore sin. There will be no sin that will not be paid for. And so God is not saying, oh, forget about it. It's like, no. I'm a just God. Because I'm a just God, I'm going to make sure that this sin is paid for. And so what you see on the cross is, on one end, his love, because instead of making us pay for it, he paid for it himself. He sent his son to die on the cross. He took our place. Like, that's love. But on the other hand, you see his justice, because he's still paying for it. The wrath of God needed to be satisfied. And so I would really encourage the church to not separate the gospel from justice, and to fight for justice, and not to just make it a hot topic, but to fight for the rest of your life for it.
Well, thank you so much for being on, man. You have a calming yet energizing presence, and it's just been really good talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It means the world. Can't wait to see this episode. I hope somebody bless somebody. It's an honor.
Absolutely.
Before we let you go, want to plug your social media, Perazim, your podcast, all that good stuff. Just plug it.
Yeah, I got a lot of.
Go ahead, man. We got time.
For sure. Well, if you go on my personal page, you'll come across my podcast and church stuff. So I'll just do that. So it's just Ebenezer Endiryas, my first and last name. So EBENEZERENDIRYAS. So at that, and you should find everything else. And then that's Instagram. Twitter, it's Ebenezer End. So at EBENEZEREND. They wouldn't take my full last name. So
dang.
Take the first.
All right, man. Hey, man, we appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. We will have more conversations in the future about this, either on or off the podcast, or whatever. But I definitely want to have more conversations about this with you. So
you got to have that conversation about institutional racism.
Yeah, man. We'll definitely do it. We'll definitely do it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Yeah, man.
Guys, that was our discussion surrounding the main topics going on in the world today in early June 2020. by the time this gets out to you, I mean, who knows what will have happened by then? I mean, I feel like every hour there's new breaking news. But
Honestly.
I mean, I guess we'll keep talking about these things as long as we feel needed. We will release those May episodes. We're not sure, but we will release them at some point here because I mean, I do believe distraction is important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't 24/7 be on this. Like you need to take a mental break every now and then.
Rest is huge. Sleep is huge. You got to recharge. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So we'll definitely get those out to you soon. Check out all of Ebenezer's stuff he's got going on. Go check out his church, man. I'm not a member, but I've been several times and I've enjoyed it every time I've gone to church and heard him speak. So it's really good stuff what they got going on over there at Perazim. And check out his podcast too, Shaping the Culture. They're talking about stuff going on in the faith community. And I guess it's a show. Guys, thank you for listening. Remember, we are also on Spotify now. So if you're on Spotify, please go check us out there. Let us know if you've listened to us on Spotify. Go subscribe on all platforms and let your friends know. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at podcast, The Cook and the Coach. Also, Twitter at The Cook and the C1. My socials, Beza, BAEZATEN SAIE. Ken, go ahead. Give me your stuff.
On Instagram, KPMartin2, KPMartin2, and Haymarket Catering, which is my food page. You can also find my music, Kenny Martin Bucket List. As my camera, as my computer almost falls, we're keeping that in. Literally, that went like that.
Of course we are. We don't leave anything out of here.
You can find my music if you look up Kenny Martin Bucket List anywhere music is streaming. You can check it out.
Fitting that we have the sirens in the background.
Yeah,
Very
honestly,
fitting.
a lot of them too.
Guys, I know I talked to you that I had my own personal project that I was working on. That's been on hold with protests, George Floyd, and then also personal life stuff with, I just feel like there's like a new death every other day now. But just lots of personal stuff going on. But I am still working on it, and once I have a few of those canned and ready to go, I will be releasing my new venture out to you guys. So
very exciting.
Stay tuned for that. And
I think that's it.
That's all I got. Guys, this has been another episode. I know, like I said, we're going to go a half hour, and it's been like almost an hour now.
All good.
That's what we do, guys. That's what we do. We love you guys. Please be safe.
Peace.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.